Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another special edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. And this is the review of Harrison Ford's final turn as the iconic Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. How are we doing, everybody? This is a review that I was looking forward to doing even before I watched the movie because I'm a huge fan of this franchise. I am a giant, humongous, I can't think of another adjective, fan of Indiana Jones. And this was one of my most anticipated films of the year. And I was very excited going into this. Didn't have my expectations too high, but yet and still, I was very excited. At the same time, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is directed by James Mangold, who also co-wrote the screenplay, and it stars Harrison Ford in his fifth and final portrayal of archaeologist Indiana Jones. The film also stars Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Max Mikkelsen, Toby Jones, Antonio Banderas, Boyd Holbrook, and John Rhys Davies returning as Salak. This go around, Indiana Jones finds himself in 1969. Him and his estranged goddaughter Helena Shaw tried to locate a device that could change the course of history before Walter, a Nazi turned NASA scientist, can get it for himself, and after the outcome of World War II, to correct Adolf Hitler's past mistakes. This is the first and only film in the series that neither was directed by Steven Spielberg nor written by George Lucas, and both do serve as executive producers instead. This is also the only film in the series not to be distributed by Paramount Pictures following Disney Studios' acquisition of Lucasfilms. Paramount did retain the distribution rights for the first two films and residual assisted credit on this film. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and you do not wish to be spoiled, this is your warning. Pause this show, download this show, go watch the film, then come back and join the fun as we talk in depth of the film. Not gonna go beat by beat with the film, or do a complete recap of every single scene in this movie, but we are going to touch in on a couple of spoilers that's vital to a couple of points I want to make throughout this review. So there was really no way for me to review this film non-spoilery. I really had to touch in on some spoilers. So that is your final warning if you do not want to be spoiled about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Here we go. First and foremost, let me say this. I went into this film, as I said, low expectations, weren't expecting a lot, because I remember in 2008, my expectations were through the roof for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I was like, okay, man, we're back. We're back. And I was ready to back out the theater after watching that movie. I was so disappointed, so let down with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I still wake up some nights in cold sweats, like, no, Harrison, no, don't make that movie. I was really, really disturbed by this installment into the franchise. And so basically, I went into this movie. Look, all you have to do is be better than that. All you have to do is not be as silly as that movie. And I'm so happy to report that it was 10 times better than that movie. I really, really enjoyed Dial of Destiny. It was a fun time in the theater. And that's basically what I enjoy about watching Indiana Jones films, having fun. It is an adventure film. It is exciting. It's adrenaline filled. It's a character that we all can root for, a character that we all can envision ourselves being and emulating at some point in your life. I did enjoy this film. This film had a very compelling story. I think. Uh, well, I'm gonna go with the. Let's start off with the positives. Well, yeah, let's start off with the positives, then we'll go into the negatives. My positive, because I do have negatives. I have thoughts, people. This wasn't a perfect film by no stretch of the imagination. I have thoughts, but let's start with the positives. Let's start off on a good note. Harrison Ford. What more do you want me to say? Harrison Ford. This man is 80 years old, and this is a character that he has been playing for the better part of 40 years, and he still got it. He still got it at the ripe young age of 80. He really brought something more to this role this go around. It wasn't the same Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Of course, you know, that was in 1981. It was going to be a progression, and he's 80. We can't hide the fact that he's 80. It's common sense. Now, there were scenes, and then we're going to get to them. I'm going to talk about the de-Asian when we went back in time. Actually, that's how the film started off, oddly enough. But, yeah, they leaned into the fact that he's an old man. He's he's not the same. There was a line that he was telling Helena Shaw later on in the film when they were climbing up this rock structure, and he kind of stops, and she asks him, like, what's wrong? Is something wrong? He's like, I'm thinking. And she like, why are you just I can't remember the exact lines that she said there, but he's like, look, I'd have been through it all. I've been shot nine times. um I got a plate in one leg. I have a screws in the other leg. I have a compressed vertebrae. I had to drink the blood of whatever that deity was in Temple of Doom. I was turned into a zombie. I was doing, he just went off on this rant about that. And it's like, man, you don't know what it's basically saying, you don't know what I've been through, girl. This, you have no idea. And that was just one instance, and I thought that was real cute and funny. But they addressed the fact that he's an older man. He retired, even though it seems like he was forced to retire from his job at the university. So we are finding him at this low point, but he's still indie. When Helena comes and meets up with him and basically, like, gives him a spark. You saw that glimmer in his eye when he was talking about the doll and talking about the background of it all, and you just saw that glimmer in his eyes. And for a brief moment, but it happened throughout this film, but it was like the first time in the film that you get that feel like, oh, that's indie, and it was just so beautiful to watch, and to see that Harrison Ford got that. He reached back and got that from the first Indiana Jones was special, and Harrison Ford need to be commended for that, for this performance, should I say. Speaking of performances, Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena Shaw, the goddaughter of Indiana Jones here. I thought this was a interesting character, very interesting character. She had the spunkiness of an Indiana Jones that I quite enjoyed, I must say. I had some things that I would touch on when I get to the negatives, but I did enjoy her character. Mads Mikkelsen, when is he ever bad? I mean, as the villain here, I love Mads Mikkelsen, even though I can't say his name properly. I love him in every single role that he is in. And when I found out that he was going to be the villain in this installment of Indiana Jones, I was like, oh, that's perfect. You know, as a former Nazi now working for NASA to help the United States get somebody on the moon. Now, this isn't science fiction. This isn't a fantasy writer's room uh, uh, thrown together plot. That is actual facts. That is facts, ladies and gentlemen. Um, if you ever wondered, yes, it was indeed Nazis, former Nazis, that helped NASA scientists get uh, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and all those good folks on the moon. And so they actually took that from history books and applied it in this film. The young actor who plays Helena's sidekick, Teddy, I think his name is Ethan Isidore. Haven't seen him in nothing before. I think this is his first role. He, if I'm not mistaken, that I read somewhere, but he did a pretty good job. I thought that character was going to be annoying when we first are introduced to him, but I enjoyed him throughout the film. He isn't short round level good. I'm not gonna put him up there with short round, but he was good. He was good. I wouldn't mind seeing him in other projects. That's continuing on in this particular franchise. But I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Ethan Isidore in other projects. I enjoyed him in this film. I thought that the set designs throughout the production design was absolutely gorgeous. The first thought when I was about 15, 20 minutes into this film, I was like, this feels like Indiana Jones. This feels like the old Indiana Jones. You know, it just it had that vibe. It just looked like an old Indiana Jones film. I really can't find no other way to explain it. And I was thrust back into that world. The problem with Crystal Skull, it didn't feel like it. It didn't look like it. It was glossy. It was, it just didn't have that same look or feel or tone. I was out of it, but here it was a return to form. The special effects was amazing. The de-aging they did on Harrison Ford for the opening scene, which took place in 1944, I thought was really good. It was moments. There was moments like at the beginning when they first pulled off the little hood off his face, and I was like, it's not looking too good here. And these are close-ups. It ain't like they're trying to hide it, but I'm like, that looks kind of shaky, that special effects there, the de-aging here. And I know that's a hard effect to pull off, the de-aging. But and I try not to be too critical of the de-aging thing, because I try to look past all that, but it just stuck out and at one little moment. But as the scene went on, I stopped noticing it. As the performance went on, and that's what saved it, because when they first revealed it, he didn't talk. His mouth wasn't moving and all this stuff. So it made me notice it more. But once Harrison Ford started talking and the action was going on, I didn't notice it. I thought he was a younger man. I thought he was 40 years younger. You know what I'm saying? So it looked good as it went on. And the 1960s New York and the Tinker Tank parade and all that looked good. I was all in on that. It was beautifully shot. Beautifully shot. And the action sequences, I just named two. The train at the beginning, awesome scene. The scene with the Tinker Tank parade, that was pretty good. And the battle at the end when they went back in time to ancient Rome, that was amazing as well. I thought pretty much the majority of it was good. I had some problems with some other ones. Like I said, I'll get to that when I get to my negatives. But those were exceptionally well crafted action scenes in this film. So let me move on to the negatives that I had with Dial of Destiny. I think the screenplay could have been glossed over maybe one or two more times. There are a couple of things in here that I think would have made this movie uh, much better, much better. Done with simple lines throughout, throughout this script. I didn't. It was just at certain points, it just felt like let's get to the next scene. It didn't flow. It didn't flow at points. It was like an abrupt stop and go, and then certain things that was addressed, and it was addressed kind of lazily. And I feel okay, either you're gonna talk about it or just leave it completely out of this movie. The scene where we are reintroduced to Valor, Mads Mikkelsen's character in 1969 when he's in the hotel, and we have room service come up to his room, and it's this black uh, 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 what you call it, a concierge or whoever brings him his food, and uh, Valor addresses that, oh, where are you from? Now they're in New York, so he's like, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from the Bronx. I'm like, no, where did your people originally come from? Indicating, if he's from Africa or something like that. And the hotel attendant was like, I was born. Look, I was born here. And that was the end of it. Like, I'm American. And that was the end of that. It was just softball. It was softball. If we're gonna bring up the race thing, because we all know Nazis were racist. That's no secret. the whole basics of their mission statement, they're racist. So I don't know, if you're gonna go there, let's go there. But if you're not going to go into it fully, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Not to mention they had a black woman working with them, who was part of the CIA. You know, you never addressed her blackness. It was none of that. Uh, I just don't. I just think that they kind of dropped the ball on that little thing. Then it was the fact that nobody in Indiana Jones' life was there. He was alone. He was alone. And look, there's nothing more depressing than to die alone or grow old alone and all that other stuff. It's depressing, and I know that's probably what they were trying to depict here, but this is Indiana Jones, world renowned archaeologist. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows what he has done, what all he has accomplished in life. And nobody, when we first well, not first, but when we are reintroduced to him in 1969, it's like he ain't, he's a nobody. You know what I'm saying? He's teaching at this university, at this college, and the students don't really respect him. They, act like they're disinterested in his lecture in his class. It's like, well, why did you take the class? you know, it's like they just didn't care who he is or what he was talking about. Because in my mind, I'm thinking back to Raiders of the Lost Ark when he was teaching, and you got students just entrenched in every word that's coming out of his mouth. You even had one young lady who wrote "I love you" on her eyelids when he was teaching. And now we come all the way to here, and he's like, nobody cares. Marion, who we all know, at the end of Crystal Skull, they got married. Uh, we don't even see her in the beginning. They're divorced now, and the reason for their divorce is because their son Mutt enlisted and went and fought in Vietnam and got killed. And we learned this later on when Indiana tells this to Helena when they're on the boat, which was a good scene, real good scene, real powerful scene from Harrison Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. He tells her, like, because she asks him, if you use the dial, where will you go back in time and change? And I'll go back and stop my son from enlisting. And you're like, okay, you know why? And he's like, because it cost so much. Because he enlisted, he went and fought, he died. Uh, my marriage broke because of that. My life has been in shambles because of that. He just couldn't bounce back from it, and it it tore me up to watch that. Now, I know this is supposed to be the negative section of the show, but that was a real written part of the show. I mean, part of the movie. I love that scene on the boat when he's talking about that. I mean, it was soul crushing to hear him talk about how his life went to crap because of that one instant, because of that one decision of allowing his son to enlist in the military and ultimately going to war and being killed in Vietnam. So that just tore him up and tore his marriage apart. But the point I'm trying to make through all this, well, another part is the character of Helena. As much as I enjoyed Phoebe Waller-Bridge throughout this movie, I didn't like her role per se. She wasn't a good guy. She was a grifter. She was a thief, and she had no respect for Indy. It was like, what is going on here? And I bring all those instances up, and there's even more. But the only people that really respected him were his colleagues at the college. They threw him a retirement party. They actually uh, respected him and liked him and whatever. But nobody else in this movie respected him. Well, Sala did. He always loves it. He wanted to go on the adventure with him, but Indiana Jones talked him out of it. Like, nah, this isn't one of the adventures that we used to go on. But it just pained me to see Indiana Jones at the ultimate low. And look, on we rewatch, I might appreciate it more, but I didn't really appreciate this iconic character being rock bottom, and he was rock bottom the entire movie. It wasn't it wasn't like there's a redemption throughout this. I guess you can argue at the very end, literally the last scene of the movie, but it's just he was basically, prior to that scene, the scene before that, he was begging to die. He was just like, he gave up on life. Just the scene prior to the end of the movie, he gave up. And man, come on, Indy. I know you're old. Everybody knows you're old. You're tired. I get it, but there's more to life. Don't give up. Never give up. Never surrender. Galaxy Quest. But yeah, I'm really hurt by that route that they took with it. Going back to the scene at the airport with Sala, when Sala wanted to go with, I mean, it felt so good to see John Rhys Davies back at this character once again. That he created in 1981, and his love for Indy, is there. It's still there. He has that same energy, and he was like, "Yeah, I brought my passport to go along with you." And I felt the writers missed the opportunity here to give a line, because at this point, Sala, he has grandchildren, and he has a family. He has a big family to take care of, and I think just a simple line of Indiana Jones saying, you have a family. I can't take you with me. You have somebody to live for. Somebody to uh, be here for. I don't. So you go ahead on and stay with your family. It would have been sweet and appreciative, more appreciative, I felt, that Indiana Jones would have done. The old Indiana Jones would have said that, but that didn't happen. It was like, nah, this isn't the adventure that we normally go on, and he just walked off. Kind of just left him there like a little puppy at the door. It was so sad. And I think that could have been cleared up with one line. Now, I'm not a writer. I only play one on TV, but I think that would have worked. It's just certain little things like that, that would have just kind of helped the story a little bit better. But I digress. I told you I enjoyed a vast majority of the action sequences. There were some that I didn't care for. The action sequence when they were in Morocco, that car chase sequence, it was funny. It had some cute little moments, but overall, it didn't have that same excitement as a Indiana Jones chase sequence that we've grown to know and love throughout this film franchise. Um, it was all right. It was all right, but it just didn't have that energy that all the other films had, and the ones that I listed earlier, they did have that, but it was just that scene and the boat scene. They were all right, but yet it was like it just didn't have that pop. It was no adventure in it. And that's what I know and love about this franchise is the adventure. And it just didn't have it in those scenes. But my final negative in this film, I hinted to it a little while ago, was Indiana Jones when they went back in time to what was it, 200 BC in ancient Rome or ancient Italy, wherever it was. And he was shot. He had got shot on the plane, or before they brought him on the plane, and he was basically bleeding out. He was dying. And they're in this ancient time, and he gave up. He was like, leave me here. Just leave me here. And that hurt me to my heart because Indiana Jones is a character who never gives up. He doesn't give up no matter what. And it just did not have the impact on me that I think they were trying to achieve here. But I just couldn't, I just couldn't rock with it. And his reasoning is when we get to the scene after this, when he's talking to Helena and she's like, no, you needed to come back. First and foremost, you would have changed the course of history. But secondly, you got a lot to live for here. And he's like, for who? And it was just heartbreaking and sad. Now, going by this story in this film, the way this movie is written, yeah, it had an impact because it's like, yeah, who? He doesn't have anybody. Not even you. You've been betraying me the whole movie, until that final moment. But it wasn't. It just was sad. And this is one of the greatest heroes in film, and for this film, for 90% of it, to have this character just a shell of himself was really, really disturbing. And it may come off crazy when you hear my grade, but I just didn't like that. I just didn't like how they did that. But look, I get it. I get it for this movie. I'm not naive. I'm doing this. I'm giving this in a biased way because I'm a huge fan of this character. But I get it, what they were trying to do. I truly do. I just didn't want to accept it. I just didn't like it going that route. But speaking of, I said that was my final negative. No, this is my final negative. And this goes with the writing as well. Now, they went back in time to 200 BC. The reason Phoebe Waller-Bridge, character of Helena, brought Indy back, knocked him out and brought him back to our time, or to their time in 1969, was because she didn't want to break the space-time continuum. Okay, I understand that. But here's the problem I have. A whole airplane crashed and exploded on the beach, and they left it there. Just Now I know they couldn't pick it up and bring it with them, but you so concerned about the space time continuum, you left a plane in 200 BC. Make it make sense. It just did not make sense. It didn't make sense. Uh, that's writing. That's a writing faux pas. Um, so I don't know. I don't know how you correct that, but hey, it is what it is. Because the whole while when that whole sequence was going on, I'm like, how are they going to get these planes back in actual time, in current time? And one crashed because it was two planes that went. One of them crashed, and I don't know. But regardless, let's end this review on a high note. My biggest positive, and it was the final scene of this movie, which was the final appearance of Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford. He's recovering from his wounds. He's talking to Helena and Marion. After he asked who, for who, why would I come back? Who I'm gonna come back for? And Marion walks through the door. And yes, it was played by, she returned, Catherine Catherine Allen, or Karen Allen. I keep saying I said Catherine in a past review. It bothered me when I went back and listened to it. Like, man, I missed that. No, it's Karen Allen, and she returns as Marion Ravenwood. And it was like, oh, okay, this is how we're gonna end off. And uh Helena instructs everybody, let's, because Salah came with his family to see how Indy was doing and everything. And she's like, look, let's leave them alone. Let's go. So they all left and they're talking. And it was a subtle little scene. I hope everybody caught it. When when earlier in the film, when Harrison Ford had woke up and he looks over at the counter and he sees the divorce papers on the table, and he has a picture of Marion on his refrigerator. So he takes one of the refrigerator magnets and puts it over her face. And so when we come back to the end scene and she's putting away the groceries in there and she opens the door and he just subtly moves that magnet off of her picture. Just real quick, they didn't close in on it or nothing like that. It was just a subtle little move that he moved, he moved it out the way. I thought that was so cute and beautiful. And they're talking, and he's like, why are you here? Why are you here? And she looks at his wound and she's like, does it hurt? And he tells everything hurts. And oh boy, I'm about to break. All right, because I cried in the theater. I'm just gonna be a man about it and let y'all know I cried in the theater because I knew where this was heading, and I was like, y'all are so wrong for this. So they continue to talk, and he's like, well, what doesn't hurt? And she points at her elbow, and he kisses her elbow, and she points at her shoulder. He kisses her shoulder, and then they kiss. They embrace and kiss. If you don't know what that is a 40-year-old callback to the first Indiana Jones film, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Harrison Ford did that same thing and pointed to his elbow, and Marion kissed his elbow in the shoulder, and then he pointed to the lips. And I was like, oh my God, they did it. But it was perfectly placed. Beautiful scene. And it was just like, got it. And then we get the fade out. We see the fedora hanging on the clothesline with the clothespin holding it up. And right before it goes to black, we see Harrison Ford snatch it off the line. And it goes to black. And we hear the iconic John Williams score. Credits roll. And look, out of all those negatives that I said, that didn't stop me from enjoying this film. This was a very enjoyable film. Enjoyed it for the performances of Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, The sequences were comparable. I enjoyed the opening action sequence and that final battle in 200 BC with the Romans, and the direction by James Mangold. I'm sorry, I think he directed this pretty decently. You know, I think it was a really well directed film that fits perfectly in the Indiana Jones lore. Like I said, my only negatives, maybe the CGI was a little touchy in spots. The screenplay was a little shaky in spots, and the treatment of the character throughout the film was very shaky throughout. But overall, I enjoyed it. I would go see it again. I'll go see it 3 or 4 times. Actually, it was good. It was a fun time in the theater, and that's all I can ask for. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the final film in the franchise, gets a letter grade of a B. I think it is a awesome addition. Um, would have liked it to end on a better note if this is our final film. Well, there ain't no if. This is the final film. I wish it would have ended in a more spectacular way, if that makes any sense, because it was a spectacular finale to this film, but involving Indiana Jones. He really wasn't involved in the outcome of this movie, you know, the resolution of this movie. He really wasn't involved in it. And so that's my knock. But it is what it is. I still enjoyed it. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny gets a B. But what's more importantly, I would like to know, how did you feel about it? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Also look up the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you don't mind. Also, give those 5 stars, those reviews, and share this show with all your loved ones. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of my favorite cinematic character of all time. The final go-round, the final film of Harrison Ford, starring as Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny. Hate to see him go. Sad to see him go. I tip my fedora to you, Mr. Ford. Gonna miss you in this role. Can't wait to see you as Thunderbolt Ross in the MCU. It ain't like his career over. He's not retiring from acting. He's still going. But he is retiring from this role. Cheers to you, sir. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, boys and girls, you be blessed.